Hi, I'm Jim Patterson, the President of the Land Conservancy's Board of Trustees. And on behalf of the board and staff, I'd like to welcome you to the Conservancy's annual conservation reception. The video you are about to see will take you on a journey through a small sample of what the Land Conservancy has accomplished the past few years. Like everyone, the Land Conservancy faced challenges during the pandemic. However, we were still able to make significant progress in all areas of our organization. I want to thank and congratulate our dedicated and creative staff. They continued to work safely and effectively to keep the office open, to implement our restoration and stewardship programs, manage our properties, and conserve over 4,000 additional acres of valuable habitat and agricultural land in 2020. As many of you know, a strong volunteer effort is essential to helping the Land Conservancy achieve our mission to conserve and care for the land. Every year at our annual reception, we give an award to a deserving volunteer. This year we have 2 awards as we were unable to hold the reception last year. The Barbara Baltimore Volunteer Award is named to honor the spirit of a volunteer who gave over a decade of service to the Land Conservancy. The Barbara Baltimore Volunteer Award recognizes exceptional dedication, longevity, and hands-on support for local land conservation and restoration. The first award goes to an individual who has volunteered with Learning Among the Oaks, the Land Conservancy's outdoor education and environmental leadership program. His contributions are remarkable in several ways. He logged more than 180 hours of work in 2020. His contributions involve both physical and professional skills. He's a retired electrical engineer with a lifetime of professional experiences that he willingly shares. He is responsible for the installation of 2 state-of-the-art drip irrigation systems at the Santa Margarita Elementary School. He says that being retired means that I need to give back to the community. I enjoy working with the Land Conservancy. The Barbara Baltimore Environmental Award is presented to Bill Kane. The second award goes to an individual who is always available to help with any task on the Pismo Preserve. He has been there during the busy closed weekends to support our patrolling volunteers. He even got stuck in a hailstorm checking the trails for reopening. He has recruited an amazing group of trail volunteers who work every Thursday on the entire property. There is no job this crew cannot or will not do. He is also part of our gate crew, opening and closing the gates as needed. I cannot imagine our property without his presence on the preserve. The Barbara Baltimore Volunteer Award is presented to Steve Lakowski. Congratulations to these 2 very deserving individuals who represent just a few of the volunteers who participate with the Land Conservancy on a regular basis. Without volunteers, we simply couldn't be as successful as we are. In this virtual presentation, you will see examples of our work at Black Lake Canyon in South County and scenic working ranches, oak woodlands, and wildlife habitat in North County. Our work to preserve in perpetuity the quality and diversity of San Luis Obispo County's signature landscape encompasses the entire county. Through the efforts and involvement of the board, staff, members, volunteers, and partners, the Land Conservancy of San Luis Obispo County is one of the most successful land trusts in California. You help ensure that present and future generations have an abundance of wild places to enjoy and to connect with nature. You help conserve fertile farms and working ranches. Your investment in the Land Conservancy is an investment in the future for everyone. For that, we sincerely thank you. Now it's time to take a look at some of the projects we've completed and some of what lies ahead. Sit back and enjoy what you are helping to create. After the showing, be sure to click on the Zoom link to join Executive Director Kyla Detman and Deputy Director Daniel Bowman for a live question and answer session.
Cuando uno viene a caminar, digamos, en estos lugares, la verdad, uno se siente libre, teniendo, digamos, el aire que es fresco, la brisa del mar, te hace sentir como en casa, te hace sentir algo especial. Yo pienso que como estas organizaciones, LC, la verdad son muy importantes. Es muy importante también lo que es no tomar, sino apreciar más nuestra naturaleza, la que nos ofrece aquí en la costa central.
The location of the Pismo Preserve was really significant for our organization, for our community, because it serves a population that in this aspect with open space has been underserved in the past. This area in particular had lacked a lot of this open space, upland trails, mountain biking, running. The Land Conservancy, by purchasing the preserve, has been able to provide a place for the community so that they don't have to go all the way out to Montana de Oro or go south to other trails. They can have this right in their own backyard to come connect with the land in a way they haven't before. Before the community stepped in to help us purchase this property, it was slated to be homes, a boutique hotel. There would have been a lot of development. So without that support from the community, this place would look a lot different and people wouldn't be accessing it in the way that they are now. We want it to be an example of proper land management and restoration of wildlife habitat. So we hope that it's an educational experience as well. Our team and our staff and our volunteers have spent countless hours making this place possible. So coming out here is a great refresh and reminder of why we do the work we do. And I hope for our supporters, it's a reminder of what they've contributed to and what they've made possible. After experiencing the Pismo Preserve, it's hard to imagine not having access to open space like this. And I do hope, and I've seen, that as people get more exposure to nature and open spaces like the Pismo Preserve, that they care a lot more, even about land that they can't access.
Yo pienso que lo que es fotografía no simplemente es algo que me gusta hacer, sino me ayuda también a descubrir lugares como estos. Y lo más bonito de este lugar, yo pienso que está abierto para cualquier persona, no simplemente cierto tipo de personas, sino para todos. Todos pueden venir a disfrutar este paisaje. Cuando se está metiendo el sol, y más aparte con estas vistas, la verdad se siente uno libre.
This little patch of the world really does offer this very, very unique place for all these rare species to live. There are not that many dune systems in the world, let alone ones that have native habitats on them. The dune system is constantly moving, and that habitats, as they move inland, change very, very quickly. Black Lake is part of the Guadalupe-Nipomo Dunes Complex, which is 11 miles of coastline. It's a small piece, just 160 acres on the coast here, but a very integral part of the system and provides important wetland resources for the entire complex. The Guadalupe-Nipomo Dunes Complex in general is an important wildlife corridor through this part of California. There's a lot of development, and having this corridor along the coast really just opens up movement of large mammals as well as migratory birds. Having this diverse amount of habitats at Black Lake really does allow for all these species. We We do restoration here, as well as protecting federally listed species that inhabit this space. It's really impressive how quickly invasive species can have an impact on the habitat. And just in my time removing that invasive species pressure, you really do see all the natives come back in annual flushes of flowering plants, and you just see more birds and more small mammals running through the landscape. The Land Conservancy has been implementing restoration work on this property since we bought it in 2000. We have some really good partners with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and California Department of Fish and Wildlife that help us get grants for this property. It's all a community act to make all of these habitats become whole. My job at the Land Conservancy is a way of life. You are implementing the way that you see the world and the importance of these wildlife habitats. The Land Conservancy is very invested in this area with Black Lake Canyon and Black Lake. We have lots of great partnerships with local landowners where we have conservation easements on other pieces of property that are very important in this area. You know, we have a presence here. We intend to preserve this type of habitat and these properties for the long haul.
I'm not in a position where I'll ever be able to own a ranch like the Attiyeh Ranch. But I am in a position where I can help save a ranch like the Attiyeh Ranch. Working out on a landscape that's this large and has so many parts to it, and to know that we're helping to save those parts, it's hard to even put a value to that. It's hard to state how important it is to me. One of the reasons we chose the Attiyeh Ranch as a conservation project over, say, another 8,000-acre ranch is because it has that interface between a major and very important watershed and all of this incredibly diverse habitat directly adjacent to it, all still functioning at its highest levels. Where it is situated geographically in the county makes it a critical spot for wildlife permeability across the area that we refer to as the Adelaide. Keeping large blocks of landscape contiguous with each other is critical, not only for those things that are far-ranging, but for those things that move even short distances. Roads or other things that break up the landscape make real barriers. The way that this ranch would function under something like climate stress, right, where we know that as the climate is changing and putting pressure on other species, say for example to the south of us, those species are going to try to essentially migrate or move to habitat that's more suitable, but they're going to do that incrementally. And having this contiguous band of property or of habitat allows them to move incrementally with that change, rather than have to try to make big leaps across habitat, which for many species would be impossible. The Attiyeh Ranch lies really at the headwaters of the Nacimiento River. So much water is moving through that watershed, filtering down through the Narrows into the lake. The water is spilling out of the lake and it's recharging the Salinas River. That water that a farmer in Salinas is pulling out of the ground to irrigate, a spinach crop may well have started as a raindrop falling on the mountains behind the Attiyeh Ranch. And it can't be understated the importance of making sure that the land uses surrounding that watershed are consistent with slowing water down, sinking it into the ground, recharging that groundwater to make sure that that river the lake and the watershed beyond and the salinas all stay healthy and recharge. Whether it's where a tree is growing or where wildlife are going to travel, water is the basis of life, and that's universally true. No water, no life. One of the things that I'm fond of saying is we need to try to keep the common things common. We pay closer attention to those things that are rare because they seem somehow more special. The thing is, those things weren't always rare. There was some stressor or some event, typically, that drove those things into that state of rarity. Certainly there are things that are rare here, but what makes it really special is not the occurrences of these rare species. It is the fact that it supports this overall diversity of both rare and common things. Doing a conservation easement project on the Attiyeh Ranch is kind of a lifetime's worth of work. It's also just an immensely beautiful part of our county. We have been working on it for over 10 years. To see it come to fruition this coming year is, with no exaggeration, one of the highlights of my career in conservation. I've been doing it for almost 2 decades.
My mom always had this thing, just listen to the community. How do we get people out back on the land and knowing where their food comes from, building that relationship with their community, not just socially, but environmentally. We're losing agricultural lands at an exponential rate, and having organizations like the Land Conservancy that will, work with farmers like us and help us acquire land, it's a great opportunity. Our apples they're not traveling from Washington or from another state. These are less than a mile from our farm stand. The ability to just stay here on these grounds and keep it in agriculture and keep these lands rural and keep them out of development really protects them for our natural resources, and that's huge. There's nothing more important than that.
The Lower Slope Creek Floodplain Preserve represents a really good example of humans working as part of an ecosystem and not separate from an ecosystem. Our goals with that property are to conserve agriculture, but also to conserve habitat values for wildlife, water quality, and to connect people with the land. Put a lot of work into the health of the riparian corridor, a lot of invasive plant control work, and trying to get a really healthy wetland ecosystem that's adjoining with the agriculture field. By us leasing that out to agriculture, we get the benefit of them helping us manage the property, which is huge, but we also get some lease income on the property that we can use then to help restore it.
It's great to be with an organization that carries the same values as we do in land stewardship. Being managers of land, being able to work together on that property and really come together and make decisions that are best for the soil and the community and our environment as a whole. From conception, all of our properties have been meant to bring the community out onto the farm, to get people out on open lands. Kids can put their hands in the soil, they can grab a peach right off the tree, they can learn about cover crops. This is a place where people can come together. Been running these fields barefoot since I was a little kid, and keeping it in ag in perpetuity, that I know that my kids someday will be able to run through those same orchards and help me harvest. That's the greatest gift you can give somebody, and it's the greatest gift I ever got.
Protecting the Santa Rita Ranch really hits at the heart for me. Once it was on the open market like it was, you can't control who buys it or what they try to do with it. When this ranch came up for sale, we knew that we had to act. Incredibly, 1 year later, we managed to buy the ranch and we are going to own it into the future. Being able to work with willing landowners locally and do conservation easements, keeping their properties and ranching and connecting this to it is just such an exciting achievement to really know that this place will forever be here for wildlife, for education. Protecting this property is one of the proudest moments of my career. It took a village to make this happen, but our work is not yet done. We have some years of planning ahead of us, right? It's like, what is the best way to manage this ranch to enable the wildlife to thrive, the agricultural operation to thrive. Also, figuring out what level of use, from the community we can do out here. We know that we want to host educational activities here, and we're excited to work through that planning process and see what's to come. This ranch sits on the headwaters of Santa Rita Creek, which flows year-round and flows to the Salinas River, which of course ends up at the ocean and supports a lot of agricultural operations along the way. And to have protected the lake here, to have protected all the abundant springs means so much, not only for those downstream landowners and users of that water, but also for the wildlife habitat. It's important to protect something of this size. It has a meaningful effect. The animals can grow and thrive here. It just sits at the heart of a major wildlife corridor that stretches from Big Sur all the way to the Los Padres. And it's really important from a wildlife perspective, not only for the habitat that's here, for the wildlife that live here, but for those that will move through this region into the future and in response to climate change. We put a lot into every project, right? And there are many landowners that approach us curious about protecting their property. There's a lot of opportunities that come up that maybe we don't have the funding or the ability to act on, or we work hard on one and it doesn't work out, but that's okay because we know that the others will. And properties like the Santa Rita Ranch just show that when we all put our heads together and we all put our mind to it, we can protect a beautiful and incredible place like the Santa Rita Ranch. It's those wins that, keep us going. Some of these projects take years. Santa Rita Ranch was actually, in land conservation terms, a pretty quick project. We had a clock. We had to do it or it was going to pass us by. Protecting a place like this is why we do this work.